We are live. We are live. Welcome to college football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love passionately everything in college football. And if you do as well, if you need just a little bit of extra college football content to get you through the days, to get you through the nights, subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. Share it with your priest, your psychiatrist, with your significant other. Go on social media right now and share it with all your friends. Welcome in to the house that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kirk Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. You know how this works. We talk about everything college football. We start with a monologue. We go to your comments. Then we go to your phone calls. Welcome in Sunday afternoon. Two masters in the house. Randy Taylor, Cameron Beek, Kirk Bender, Daniel Montecastle, Mr. Hoosier. BR 7062 is also in the house. Thanks for all coming in. I appreciate it. So what are we talking about today? Well, after the monologue, we talk about what you want to talk about. But I think it's a good time to do PATC, Florida State, Part 3. Remember, we did Part 1 on December 26, 2022. It became a very infamous show. A lot of new people to the show, so you don't know it. But December 26th, we advertised a live show here at Peek Around the Corner at Flug Empire. The tweets are still up there saying that we were going to talk about what the Money Perch, Florida State Money Perch first told us on December 5th, and then the 12th. And then that Money Perch finally got the message across to us what Florida State was about to do on December 26th, so we were going to do a live show on it. People found out we were going to do a live show on it. They asked us to stand down. We stood down for the good of the story. The story hasn't fully ripened. It definitely wasn't fully ripened December 26th of 2022, and it really hasn't ripened yet today. Here we sit in May 14th of 2023. But I think we should talk about it because there's been some good articles on it, a lot of good discussions. Remember December 26th, it started early December 5th, but December 26th, we gave you the heads up that things were purring along. Florida State was believing internally that they had an argument to make, that they would possibly pull the trigger to challenge the ACC grant of rights, and what happened in the first quarter of 2024 or the second quarter of 2024. From what we have heard, that hasn't changed. I know a lot of people write articles or reporting in their own ways on their own platforms saying that something could happen right now, something could happen right now. We haven't gotten any word of that. We only can tell you what we hear here at Peek Around the Corner. And the story is, now, we talked about that on December 26th, and what happened a couple of months later, Alford, the athletic director, and others at Florida State started talking about this unequal revenue sharing plan that needs to be installed in the ACC, that Florida State wasn't happy, Clemson wasn't happy. They came out and their athletic director talked about it. It was a couple months after our December 26th show. We knew this was part of what Florida State was going to roll out. They're going to start communicating in public their unhappiness, that something had to change because of the money gap between themselves and SEC and the Big Ten. And then on March 31st, we did our what we call Florida State Money Perch Part 2. We talked about the possibilities of Florida State, the reasons, the issues on how they believe they could challenge the Gore in court. The grant of rights that the ACC has. The ACC owns the individual media rights of all the ACC schools. And that's not unusual. In this day and age, conferences holding the individual media rights of their institutions to better gain leverage when it comes to packaging all their live content together and trying to sell that content to potential media partners. In this case, though, as we all know, the ACC, they had a media contract, they had a grant of rights all signed all the way to 2027. But that grant of rights was extended from 2027 to 2036 when the ESPN agreed to help build them the ACC network. So all 14 ACC presidents signed on, and Notre Dame also signed on to that extended grant of rights. So now it goes all the way to 2036. And you guys all know the issues in regards to that Tier 1 media contract that the ACC has from now until 2036. Man, it's a real bad deal for those institutions. It is a great deal. It is a great deal for ESPN, who holds all the distribution license to distribute all of the ACC content. Every single bit of it. So the ACC, the top schools, find themselves in trouble. We talked about it all the way back in the episode number 1 of this channel. We talked about the issue that Notre Dame is going to have, and the walls are closing in on Notre Dame. We haven't been touching upon that lately here at Peek Around the Corner because there's been other big stories happening. But this ACC story is going to make everything else that we've talked about look like child's play. That's how long the story's going to go. That's how dramatic the story's going to go. That's how costly this story's going to go. That's how risky this story's going to go. And the huge potential payoff at the end of all this could be enormous for certain schools in the ACC. But I just wanted, before we get to the Florida State on 3 article, and before we get back to the Tiger Net article that we talked about in episode 211 earlier today, I just want to make sure we all know where we are right now in the story. Because even though here at Peek Around the Corner, we gave you a peek on December 26th and then on March 31st, I see people jumping way ahead. And that's fine to speculate. I invite the speculation on this show. Go ahead in your comments and your phone calls in this episode and speculate away on where do you think what's going to happen with the ACC. If any schools leave, where will they go? Go ahead. But here at Peek Around the Corner, when we're trying to give you a peek around the corner, we want to make it clear where we believe the story is. We're at the middle of the beginning. Not at the beginning of the beginning, not at the end of the beginning, but the middle of the beginning of the story. We have a long ways to go. Now, ACC meetings are happening this Monday through Wednesday of this week. The hot topic is going to be unequal revenue sharing. Clemson, North Carolina, of course, Florida State. We believe Miami, Florida are really, truly pushing this issue. And I don't even know if they even want a positive result, to be honest with you. This was all part of the plan. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the true story that we're tracking right now is who and when out of the ACC will publicly acknowledge that they're challenging the grant of rights, the ACC grant of rights in court. That's what we're all waiting for. Who and when, and if, obviously. Now, for years, everyone talks about how risky it would to challenge the ACC grant of rights. The grant of rights throughout all types of industry is pretty solid contract. Now, none of us here have seen the ACC grant of rights, the extended version of it. That's locked away in a so-called vault. We don't get to see it. It's not out in public. Not the extended version of it. So we don't know what it looks like. We have heard here, Peek Around the Corner, we've let you know this before, that there's a difference of opinion. Some, of course, say that's rock solid. There's no way you can break this grant of rights to win it in the court of law. Some lawyers have looked at it and said, yes, they believe it can be challenged and won. We've also told you at Peek Around the Corner, we said this on December 26th, that no one else has seen this in public. It's not out there. We also told you that when these schools do decide, if they decide to bring this to court, they would do it separately from each other. It's not going to be collusion. There's going to be no hint, no smell, no history, no tracking, no FOIA is going to find any collusion among the ACC schools and their individual decisions and whether or not they were going to challenge the ACC grant of rights. It's going to be done separately. We told you all that before. Now, I keep saying the ACC grant of rights because ESPN does not hold these rights. ESPN doesn't hold Florida State's individual media rights. ESPN does not hold Clemson's individual media rights. ACC Conference does. ESPN owns the distribution license to distribute all of the ACC schools' live content. And in accordance to the license, to the agreements, to the contracts between ESPN and the ACC, money gets forward from ESPN towards the ACC. That media money goes to the ACC in accordance to the ACC bylaws, the money gets distributed. It's very important to acknowledge that, because I keep seeing reports, people writing things down, people talking about it on YouTube channels, which is great, fantastic. But the ACC owns Florida State's media rights. So, therefore, if Florida State would decide tomorrow that they are joining the SEC, what would happen, and let's say the SEC, we're just pretending here to make a point, let's say the SEC brings in Florida State, then every Florida State home game across all sports would be put on ESPN, but the money that ESPN, the money would go to the ACC, not the SEC. The money would go to the ACC, and per the ACC's bylaws, it would be distributed among the conference and the ACC schools. Florida State wouldn't see a dime of that. That's how it would work. That's why Florida State is not of value to the SEC right now. That's why Florida State is not of value to the Big Ten right now. That's why North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Miami, Florida are not of value to the Big Ten and the SEC right now, or the Big 12 right now, because the ACC conference holds their media rights. So that has to be broken. That's where the story is. Will somebody rise up and challenge it in court? There's another theory out. There's another thing out there that people call what we have called the dissolution theory, where 8 CC schools would vote to cancel the conference. That eight ACC schools would say, we want to eliminate this conference, make it null and void. Therefore, the ACC doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, the ACC doesn't hold their media rights anymore. Therefore, the schools are free to go to the SEC or the Big Ten. The only thing I can say about that is, from people that we trust that peek around the corner, that's not going to work. It's not going to free up these schools. I know a lot of people are putting their trust and their hopes, and they believe legally that would work. We have been told no. That would not work. Now, there are also people who believe that it's impossible to break this grant of rights. It's impossible to win a court case. That this is signed, sealed. There's nothing that these schools can do about it. And maybe they are correct. But when people say it's too risky for them to go to court, it's too risky for Florida State to pull the trigger and say, these are the reasons why we believe the ACC should no longer hold our media rights all the way into 2036. I say it's not too risky because it's too risky not to challenge it. In other words, the difference in pay, the difference between what Florida State's going to get in media money compared to all the Big Ten schools and all the SEC schools, it's such an enormous figure that Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, these schools cannot afford not to take that risk. That's why this story's bubbling up. We believe at Peek Around the Corner that Alford, the Florida State athletic director, and others in ACC are not just threatening the ACC right now. It's not a false threat. It's not just they're waving their finger and saying, we need unequal revenue sharing, we need more revenue, or something might happen. We actually think, we believe that's why we started talking about this on December 26, 2022. There's an actual plan. They're lining their ducks in a row to actually challenge the grant of rights. That's the story that everyone's waiting for. That's the story that the college football reporters nationally are waiting on. They're waiting for that day. And when that if that happens, holy smokes, that's going to be a story. And when that happens, it's not a 1 day, not a 1 month. It's probably not even a 1 year story. And when we were told on December 26th, and we reported to you all on December 26th, that it's going to be the first quarter of 2024, maybe the second quarter, but the first quarter of 2024, it's because these schools can't wait longer. If they're going to pull the trigger on this, if they're going to actually challenge the Gore in the courts, in the North Carolina state courts, probably, they can't wait much longer than that because it's going to take a while. You can't challenge this in 2027, 2028, because by the time the court, by the time it's settled in court or there was an outside settlement of some point, it's going to be to where the Gore runs out naturally anyways. So if you're going to do it, if Florida State's going to do it, or Clemson is going to do it, or North Carolina is going to do it, or Miami of Florida is going to do it, they're going to do it here pretty soon. And we were told in December 26th, actually December 5th, the first time, 2022, that this was going to happen probably in the first quarter of 2024. That's the story that we're all looking at. And if one school decides to jump out and challenge it in court, another school is going to follow right behind it. Another school is going to follow right behind it. And probably another school is going to follow right behind it. And then I've been told that the ACC will probably want to have all that in one court case. And there's going to be talks of settlement. And then we'll see how it plays out. But that's the story that everyone's waiting on. Who's going to pull the trigger first, if any of them do? We believe here at Peek Around the Corner, it will probably be Florida State. But it could be North Carolina. It could be Miami of Florida. It could be Clemson. Now let's get to the story here. And then we're going to talk about the Pac-12. We're going to talk about the Pac-12. No question about it. They have a very important meeting tomorrow. Their quarterly board meeting, May 15th. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's get to an article here. War chant. Florida State intends to turn up the heat for greater revenue at the ACC spring meetings this week by Air Shuffle. Nearly 3 months after Florida State's administration created national headlines by criticizing the ACC's television contract with ESPN and saying something has to change in the future, a delegation of Seminoles will travel to Amelia Island on Monday for the ACC's annual spring meetings. And according to second-year athletic director Michael Alford, Florida State will not be backing down from that position. Ladies and gentlemen, who's ever watching the show, take this however you want it. We already said it earlier in this monologue. These are not idle threats. Florida State has made sure that they have a position here that they're willing to pull the trigger on before they went and did what they're doing right now in trying to get unequal revenue sharing here in the ACC. Back to the article. And according to second-year athletic director Michael Alford, Florida State will not be backing down from that position. In an interview this past week with War Chant, Alford said the university will continue to push the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips in the other schools for uneven revenue sharing, uneven revenue sharing, with football powers like Florida State and Clemson receiving greater financial distributions than others in the conference, and also encourage the league to find other ways to close the widening revenue gap from the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten. Alford confirmed that those will be the hot topics when league officials get together in a small beach town north of Jacksonville. I make no bones about it that we're the top brand in the conference, Alford said. And when you look at how they measured media contracts with households, viewership, and championships, we're driving that viewership for our conference at a high rate. And here is the title of our live show today, Sunday afternoon, May 14th. Quote, there are a couple of schools that are really driving that media contract. There are a couple of schools that are driving the media contract of the ACC, and they believe they should start getting more. And if not, well, we believe here at Peek Around the Corner that they will choose to take action. You can believe whatever you want to believe there in the chat room, people watching this. Back to the article. Florida State officials have been unhappy with the ACC television contracts for more than a decade. But the issue reached critical mass this past year when industry projections showed the SEC schools will soon receive about $72 million per year per school, and Big Ten schools receive about $80 million. That's the media contract alone, right? Then you throw on ACC tourney, bowl games, playoffs, you throw all that in, and they'll be trickling over $100 million per school. At the Florida State Board of Trustee meetings, Alford said ACC schools received a total payout of about $42 million this past year, with about $36 million coming from the conference television deal with ESPN. Now, you can throw the conference, the new expanded college football playoff revenue. That's going to be a lot more per school. You throw that in the mix. And ACC schools, if nothing changes right now, they'll be making about $60 million per school. 62, 63, 64, somewhere around that figure when you throw in the new college football playoff revenue coming in. With a little bit more growth of the ACC network, that's doing pretty good on ESPN. But even if you throw all that in there, 60, 65 million, they're going to be about 30, 35 million behind the Big Ten and the SEC schools when you throw it all into the pot. That will leave schools like Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, who are trying to compete for national championships in football, men's basketball, and other sports, with a revenue gap of at least $30 million each year when compared to their peers. I compliment Jim Phillips and his staff for everything they're trying to do, Alford said. And here's another money shot from the article. Here's the money shot. They understand what's coming. I've made it abundantly clear that there's a $30 million gap that's starting next season, and that can't go on for years because then you just can't catch up. In other words, if you do this for 4 years, ladies and gentlemen, you're at least $120 million behind in revenue, just off the media revenues. You're behind Ohio State. You're behind Michigan. You're behind Penn State. You're $120 million behind Rutgers, behind Mississippi State, behind Mississippi. And it comes to a point where you just can't catch up. They understand what's coming. Even more concerning is the fact that those other leagues will get opportunities to renegotiate their contracts again before the ACC deal expires in 2036. So the revenue gap could expand even wider, and it will. And as Alford pointed out, the Big 12 Conference recently negotiated television contract will be up for bid again the following 2030-2031 season. And now here comes the next money shot. The fact that in-state school UCF is now joining that league is not lost on Alford. If you look at the revenue projections, they should have a better agreement than we have by going out to the market, he said. That means there's going to be another school in the state that's going to have a better agreement than Miami and us, and that's not acceptable to us. And this is exactly what we said on October 30th, episode 83. Go back to it. Listen to it. We brought up the UCF example. And we said it in a few other live shows and episodes. We brought it up. UCF was going to have just a little bit of better media contract than Florida State and Miami, Florida. And guess what? UCF will be able to go back. Their conference is going to be able to renegotiate their media contract 5 years before the ACC will be able to do so. That puts UCF, when it comes to media contract, in the catbird seat in the state of Florida, compared to Florida State and Miami of Florida. Mike Alford says that's just not acceptable to us. Again, you can disagree with us at Peek Around the Corner. We're okay with people disagreeing with us. It makes the show go. It makes it fun. It makes it interesting. We don't believe at Peek Around the Corner that these are idle threats. Now, maybe you believe, and I gotta tell you, I think it's a hard road to go for Seminoles and Clemson Tigers going into court and challenging the ground of rights. But you may be a person that believes it doesn't matter if these are idle threats or not, because they're not going to win. They're not going to win. They're not going to win in the courts. Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. You may be right. You may be right. But again, I caution everybody, and one particularly important thing is that none of us have seen the extended grant of rights. The ACC, when they went from 2027 to 2036, none of us have seen it. We don't exactly know what the extra considerations were giving to these schools. Was it just the implementation of the ACC network, or was there extra stuff involved? And we talked about it on March 31st, how Notre Dame is, man, that's the weak linchpin of this extended grant of rights, because Notre Dame could afford, they could walk away from the ACC. And in doing so, Florida State and other schools could argue that the ACC network is nowhere as valuable as when it was given to us to extend the GOR from 2027 to 2036. In other words, the considerations doesn't match what we gave up in 9 more years of giving up our individual media rights to a conference. A new model is needed. The ACC Committee of Athletic Directors have been studying this topic for a year. They've been studying it for a year or longer, but there didn't appear to be much appetite for it at the ACC winter meetings, which is what led Alford to make strong public comments in February. And there isn't expected to be a major reversal when league officials get together starting Monday at Amelia Island. In other words, they can't get the votes. They can't get an agreement on how this should look. And quite honestly, here at Peek Around the Corner, and many of you agree with us, this ain't worth anything anyways. It's not going to solve the unequal revenue plans that are put out, are not going to solve the real issue. And that is the extreme revenue gap. Would Florida State make a few $1,000,000 more in this type of plan? Maybe, possibly. Would Clemson? Maybe. But what is the incentive for the other schools in the ACC to actually agree on this? If they're convinced that these schools are leaving the ACC in 2036, why should they give up millions now anyways? Why should a Boston College agree to an unequal revenue plan? Why should Wake Forest? Why should Syracuse? Why should Georgia Tech? Back to the article. But the reality is, even if the other ACC schools sign off on receiving a smaller distribution so that the higher profile football schools could benefit, it likely won't put a major dent in the $30 million gap. One source who's familiar with the discussions told War Chant that the most optimistic projections would yield an additional $5 million for schools like Florida State each year. And there's no confidence anything close to that will happen. We're going to continue to push, Alfred said, noting that he believes Phillips, who recently received a 3-year extension, is doing everything he can to find a solution. He's a great leader. There's no doubt. I wouldn't want anyone else leading us right now. He understands where we are. He understands where the other schools are. He knows that we want to get aggressive and invest in all of our programs. We want to win championships across the board. All 20 sports, we fund them to win championships. Not all schools in the country do that. They pick and choose and prioritize sports. Right now, we're funding them all to go win championships. That's something we want to continue to do. Can Florida State do that while remaining in the ACC? That's a major question. Do the Seminoles have any options if nothing changes? That's another major question. Attorneys from Florida State, Clemson, and several other schools have made trips to the ACC's North Carolina headquarters in recent months, and we told you this on December 26, 2022, to review the league's television contract and the grant of rights, which is believed to bind each member school to the conference through 2036. While the Seminoles haven't necessarily threatened to break that agreement and look for a new conference, they haven't ruled it out either. Florida State Board of Trustees members actually discussed what the cost might be to exit the conference at the February meeting, and the board chair, Peter Collins, later told War Chant, "We have a very good handle on the grant of rights." When he spoke with War Chant this week, Alfred said he's in constant contact with other athletic directors around the country to get a feel for what might be on the horizon with conference realignment. There's about 3 or 4 money shots, PATC money shots, in this article, and that's another one. Alfred says he's in constant contact with other athletic directors, cloak and dagger, around the country to get a feel for what might be on the horizon with conference realignment. They're talking. They're all talking. The pressures, the economics of consolidation has not relented. It keeps going. And it's what's happening in the Pac-12 right now. And we'll get to that in a second. We're going to skip a paragraph here. It's going to have an impact on everything we're doing, Alfred said. Right now, realignment is not going to stop. There's definitely going to be some more shifts coming. Is that 3 conferences of 20 where you have 60 schools that kind of break away from the rest? That's the theory of many. So who's going to be that third conference of 20 if that's the case? Now remember, Alfred is saying this, and he's talking with all these athletic directors across the country. They're trying to position themselves the best they can. Same thing that Oregon and Washington are doing right now. Same thing Colorado and Arizona are doing right now. Same thing North Carolina, Miami, Florida is doing right now. Until that national picture becomes clear, Florida State officials plan to keep doing what they've been doing, trying to squeeze every dollar they can out of the ACC, making sure that everyone in college football understands the value of the Seminoles brand. And I think that's it. That's about as far as we're going to go with that. We'll put the link in the description box. I think it is there already. Yeah, it is there. So if you want to read that whole article, go ahead. But that's where we are with the FSU story. It's not idle threats. And it said it in the article. There's not going to be any resolution. There's not going to be a plan that's installed this week. But keep your eyes and ears open. Keep your head on a swivel to see what reports come out of that meeting. Again, we do not believe the last thing we were told, and we were told this way back, that do not expect a challenge to the grant of rights by any school, if it does happen, to pull the trigger until the first quarter of 2024. We would be surprised here at Peek Around the Corner if it happens before then. However, if this meeting goes pear-shaped, if the meeting goes south and there's some anger and Alfred's been talking to everybody, right? To all the other athletic directors, and of course North Carolina's been doing the same, and Clemson's been doing the same, and so if that changes, we'll be on the story. How about that? Let me get to some super chats before we talk about the Pac-12. Thanks for all coming in. John Tell, UCF is about to be the second highest paid team in Florida. Miami and Florida State can't stand for that. And we talked about it all the way back in October 30th. When we saw the deal that was signed, when we saw what UCF was going to gradually get to as a fully invested university into the Big 12 when they get their full payouts, they were going to make a little bit more money, or at least the same as Florida State and Miami, with the Big 12 getting their next deal sooner than Florida State and Miami of Florida. The reason why I don't want to say that UCF will definitely make more money is because there is growth in what Miami of Florida and Florida State is receiving from the ACC network. The revenues are climbing a bit. So it's about the same. But thank you so much for your super chat. John Teal, thank you for helping us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner. Appreciate it so very much. Cameron B., do you think Kansas gets left out of the potential P360 situation? No, I don't think Kansas gets left out. And I'm not sure about the P3 situation. And I'm not sure about the 60 team. I mean, this is something that Alfred's talking with athletic directors. I'm sure that gets brought up a lot. But there's no way. There's no way for anybody to know what that number is. And I think there's a chance it's a P4. I think there's a very good chance it's a P4, to be honest with you. But, we're Peek Around the Corner. That's way in the future. I don't think Kansas gets left out no matter what. But, and there's one more super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Cameron B., for your generosity to the channel. Appreciate it so very much. Hero75, thank you so much for coming on into the chat. Thank you for your super chat, your generosity. I appreciate it. If the ACC teams have to go through the courts, that will take 2 to 5 years. No question about it. at least, because teams with no landing spot in the major conferences such as Boston College will appeal if they lose. It's a good point about appealing that. I happen to think if 4 or 5 schools line up to challenge it in the courts, it's going to get awfully expensive for the ACC. And who knows? Maybe there's a settlement. Maybe there's a compromise in there somewhere. But what I don't believe what's going to happen is the ESPN is going to come out and solve this issue and say, okay, those schools can leave and those schools stay, because the ESPN does not hold Florida State's media rights. And that's something that I see a lot of people getting confused on. ESPN cannot move all the chess pieces themselves. They have a lot of power, but the ACC conference has Florida State's media rights. That means, Boston College, Wake Forest, these schools are not just going to let other schools just leave, because their future becomes imperiled at that point. But thank you so much, Hero, for your donation to the show. Appreciate it. You bring up a good point. That's why we were told this is going to happen. Florida State, Miami, Florida, if these schools are going to pull the trigger, they're not going to wait to 2025. They're not going to wait to 2026. This is something that's going to happen sooner rather than later. We were told the first quarter of 2024, but we'll see. We shall see. Okay, and then let's quickly talk about the Pac-12. We've been talking about that for months. So many people in here. I got to thank a whole bunch of people for coming on in. Christopher Shannon, Alan Tran, of course, Toon Masta, John Grove, Randy Taylor, Immaculate's in the house, Derek Myrie, Joe Burke, a lot of people. Bob Husley's back in. Tough Tony, Mr. Gopher, Joe Z, Kyle Vieser. Wow, a lot of people in here this afternoon. Appreciate you all coming in. Okay, so Pac-12. They have a quarterly board meeting tomorrow, May 15th. I said on my they're gonna discuss a lot of issues. They have a lot of legal issues that they have to get control of. The Comcast part and other things. They owe money to Comcast. But one of those they're going to get an update on their media negotiations, how that's going. And I have said on at Flag Empire, we tweeted out, it's really time. George Kliavkoff has to show his best cards tomorrow. Got to show the best deal. There is a lot of vulnerability out there in the Pac-12. We've talked about it here at Peek Around the Corner. No, we're not able to tell the story, but we will at some point. So will others. The Pac-12 took a big hit to the solar plexus, and they're still standing. But there's a lot of I shouldn't say a lot. You got to reel these Pac-12 presidents back in, George Kliavkoff. You got to show them the best possible deal. And you got to sell them on positivity, but you got to show them the hard numbers, because some of these Pac-12 presidents know exactly what they're going to get if they go to the Big 12. They know what they're going to get for the next 5 or 6 years. They know they're going to be in the room for the 2026 football playoff expansion. We don't know what it's going to look like, but if they go to the Big 12, they know they're going to be in the room to decide how the future of college football is going to look like. So they need to see hard numbers. Colorado, Arizona, they know that things are going to get awfully messy 5 years from now. when the ACC, when things start imploding. If it doesn't happen beforehand, when you're going around playing musical chairs, is there going to be a chair left for you, Colorado and Arizona, if you don't get in on it now? That's all being played. Everyone's looking at this. Remember, Mike Alford said all these athletic directors are talking with each other. You don't think Arizona's athletic director is talking with the Big 12 athletic directors? You don't think Rich George is talking with them? That's all playing a part in their decision. And then you got the Oregon-Washington piece. And I want to talk about that right now. Everybody knows that we at Peek Around the Corner have been hitting this hard forever, since we started this channel. It wasn't just Kevin Warren who wanted Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten. They have support. Yeah, there's Big Ten presidents who do not want further expansion right now. They want to see how it benefits them, but they know in the future, when the Big Ten finally does expand eastward, there's going to have to be more Western expansion to balance it off. You're not going to have a 20, a 21, 22, 24 team university athletic conference with only having 2 schools west of Lincoln, Nebraska. So when is the best time for the Big Ten to expand further on the Pacific Coast? Is it now, or is it 5 or 6 years from now? It could be 5 or 6 years from now. It very well could be. Or it could be now. The biggest hurdle for further Big Ten expansion was Kevin Warren himself. Big Ten's media partner Fox Sports, they weren't going to do any more expansion with Kevin Warren in the chair. We talked about that at Peek Around the Corner. I got raked over the coals, but now he's gone. The expansion door is cracked open. A lot of more hurdles are left for further Big Ten expansion. The legal counsel of the Big Ten are not in favor of further Big Ten expansion, but if the Big 12 can crack open the Pac-12 and get into Colorado to start things off, then things could spiral. Things could happen. Brett McMurphy was on 365 Sports, and I really do have to clean this up. Brett McMurphy was on 365 Sports, and he said that Oregon and Washington were vetted and cleared. And I saw some articles, some tweets, some YouTube, very good discussion on what Brett McMurphy said about clear and vetted in that report, that interview with 365 Sports. And I'm not going to speak for Brett McMurphy. He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, and he doesn't need me talking for him. But there was a lot of people trying to analyze what Brett McMurphy meant by vetted and cleared. And they were saying, well, it doesn't really mean all that much. It's just a part of the process. 8 of the 10 Pac-12 schools could be vetted and cleared by the Big Ten. It doesn't really mean that they're wanted. The problem with saying that is you did not listen to the entire interview that 365 Sports, David Smoke, Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina had with Brett McMurphy. If that's what you're saying vetted and cleared mean. Brett McMurphy went on to say, if, and it's a very big if, he didn't say it was going to happen. He said if it happens. If the Big 12 was able to grab, let's say, Colorado and Arizona, that the Big Ten would have to take another hard look at Oregon and Washington. And if things unravel for the Pac-12, Brett McMurphy said then he believed Oregon and Washington would be in the Big Ten. In other words, Brett McMurphy was making a clear delineation between Oregon and Washington, and let's say an Oregon and Washington, then let's say a Stanford. Oregon and Washington versus a Colorado. Oregon and Washington versus a Utah, Oregon and Washington versus an Arizona State or an Arizona. He was saying vetted and cleared in the sense that, yeah, Big Ten has interest, and if things unravel, if other things happen to make it so the Big Ten don't look like they have blood on their hands, so it makes it look like the Fox Sports don't have blood on their hands for the complete elimination of the Pac-12, that Washington and Oregon would be in. People are forgetting that part of Brett McMurphy's interview with 365 Sports. He didn't just say the words vetted and cleared. Listen to what he says in the whole interview and then put it in the context. That's what I would ask. That's what I would advise here at Peek Around the Corner. So we've talked about the ACC meeting that's coming between Monday and Wednesday. Holy smokes. Unequal revenue sharing plan. It's not going to work. But I understand why their schools are bringing it up, because if they do go to court, if Clemson does go to court, if Miami of Florida does go to court, if Florida State doesn't go to court, they can say, look, we tried. We tried. And then we have the Pac-12 meeting tomorrow, Monday. And my advice to George Kliavkoff is, yes, you're going to need the hard, concrete numbers to show the Pac-12 presence. But come on, let's go here. Let's get a positive leak. If there's something there to leak that's positive, something concrete, leak it. We always see positive leaks coming out of these conference meeting negotiations. Just something. Give the people something. Positive leaks. Let's go. Something concrete. Unless you don't have anything. Then if you don't have anything, well, then we got a bigger story coming up this next week. Okay, let's get to your comments. Let's get to your phone calls. I'm way behind. I apologize. That was a much longer monologue than I thought it was going to be. James, boggles the mind. This is so blatantly going on. The Four Corner schools have not left the Pac-12 yet. Grab your damn seat before it pulls away from you. Randy Taylor says, glad I got my mug. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Go get your mugs. Go get your mugs. And go to the link provided in the description box. Cloak and Dagger mug. Big 12 expanding to Mexico. Arriba. Absolutely. The wife is in Mexico right now visiting her family. So I hope she's having fun. Jose, is there a competitive revenue clause in that new ACC grant of rights? I don't know. There probably isn't, but I don't know, Joe. I don't know. Do you know something we don't know? Could that be in there? Could that be in there? Wow, lots of great comments. Holy smokes. The Big Ten loves Rutgers. No buyer's remorse with them. Just straight cash. Homie. Straight cash homie. Coming right out of Randy Moss' mouth. Straight cash homie. Taking USC and UCLA isn't seen as killing the Pac legally because the Pac had TV negotiations options. The next departure from the Pac will indeed kill. Very good comment by Immaculate. Very good comment. Texas A&M's not going anywhere. I don't think they're going anywhere either. Sean says he has nothing to leak, Greg. George Kliavkoff has nothing to leak. That's what Sean is saying. Is Sean correct? Oh, yes, Kirk Bender. You said hot bubble open to 5/17. Does the end of the bubble move now? Also, what are the current chances the Big 12 expands via Pac-12 soon? Kirk Bender, great question. I forgot to bring this up. No, we're not moving the hot bubble of action. The hot bubble will happen The action happened. We're waiting for the results. I will say, no, we're going to stick to it, ladies and gentlemen. When this hot bubble of action occurred, and I'm not going to get too specific here, but let's just say 5-6, 5-7. Although we know we can get more specific, and we will. But when that happened, Pac-12 was incredibly vulnerable. And we put the odds of the Pac-12 being poached again, and this time by the Big 12 or anybody, 8.5-point favorites. That's a huge favorite for the Pac-12 to get poached. Since then, we brought it down into 6.5-point favorite that the Pac-12 will be poached. So we brought it down 2 points because guess what? It hasn't happened yet. Pac-12 is still standing even though they got punched in the solar plexus. But every week that goes by past our hot bubble of action, we're going to bring it down another point, and then another point, and another point. We're not going to stop. In other words, we're the complete opposite of probably everybody else out there. We're definitely the complete opposite of John Wilner, who said that as time goes on, the Pac-12 becomes more vulnerable. Of course, he hasn't changed his line at all lately. But we're not going to do that. We've already dropped it from 8.5-point favorites that they'll get poached, Pac-12, to 6.5. May 24th, Pac-12 haven't been poached yet. We're bringing that down to 5.5, down to 4.5, down to 3.5, and we'll keep doing it. Now, that might sound crazy to a lot of you, or all of you. Big 12 fans are probably scratching their heads saying, Greg, you're nuts. That's partially true. But the Pac-12 became unbelievably vulnerable, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll come out with the story when we can. But just circle that last weekend's dates. And every day that Pac-12 gets beyond that punch to the solar plexus, and they hang on, it gets a little bit better for them. I know we're saying the complete opposite of everybody else's. I get it. I get it. But because we have the story of what happened in detail, the Pac-12 got punched. Now, having said all that, that sounds like a bunch of great news for the Pac-12, but still, we have it as 6.5-point favorites that they do get poached again. They need to get a deal. It's all about the deal. The Pac-12 schools do not want to leave each other. They don't want to leave each other. But they're seeing the change in landscape of college football just like you are. They see it. They know what's going to happen in the ACC. They know what's going on. They know consolidation is still afoot. Colorado knows it's a lot easier if the Pac-12 is not going to be a viable athletic conference 5 years from now. It's a lot easier for Colorado to get an invite to the Big 12 today than it's going to be 5-6 years from now. No question about it. No question about it. And they know that. Arizona knows that. Some people at Arizona State knows that. Sean says, here's what Greg isn't saying. Allegedly, Colorado has an offer of the table to join the Big 12. The reason he's bringing the point total down is because if Colorado stays, the Pac-12 will stay together. Well, the story is the body shot isn't the offer. The body shot's even more serious than that, than what took place. But time is ticking. James, I'm so tired of the fear of having blood on their hands. Fox and Big Ten have already stabbed the Pac-12 to the point they're on life support. Absolute ridiculous stance they're taking on this. Well, not everybody in the Big Ten is taking that stance. That's the problem. But the legal department is, the legal counsel is, and we said that a couple months ago. I've been clear as I possibly can say, I peek around the corner that for months that Washington and Oregon, it's Fox Sports, I'll just put it this way, Fox Sports has no problem with Oregon and Washington becoming members of the Big Ten. Now, before I open the phone lines, the Monty Show, people directed me to the Monty Show, and they reported that they have information that CBS, NBC, Fox, that they've all agreed with each other that they would pay for the Washington and Oregon additions to the Big Ten. We don't have that information. I cannot confirm that. I will say in the Big Ten media contract, in the new media contract, it did say that in good faith, the CBS and NBC and Fox would, in good faith, renegotiate with the Big Ten if there were more add-ons. And then Notre Dame, there was a particular number involved with Notre Dame in that contract. I would say that an Oregon and Washington edition would, of course, help CBS and NBC the most. I don't think there's any question about that. Because I think in most weeks, NBC and CBS are going to rotate the second and third pick every week. Now, I say that we're not sure. I mean, we've never been granted the full details behind that media contract. I don't believe Fox Sports has the number one pick every week. So I think it gets convoluted. I think it's a lot more complicated. But just in general, I think CBS and NBC, not every week, but in general, are going to rotate that second and third pick. And when you got a Washington and Oregon in the mix, the value, the depth, the plethora, the slate of games that are sitting there to be picked, suddenly that second and third game is more, it's easier, it's more value to an NBC and a CBS. Now they're going to have to pay more, probably. Maybe a new media partner comes in and helps pay the freight. That's what we've been thinking here at Peek Around the Corner. So I can't confirm Monty's story, his report. We don't have any of that. I don't think it's that far down the tracks, to be honest with you. If there's a Pac-12 implosion happening by the hands of the Big 12 and their current media partners, Fox and ESPN, then then Big Ten's going to have more leverage with Washington, Oregon. Don't know how much Oregon and Washington, how much it would take for them to go to the Big Ten. But I just wanted to answer that question. No one has said a word to me about the current Big Ten media partners already agreeing to pay the freight for Washington, Oregon. No one has said that to me at all. I'm not saying it's incorrect, what's being reported elsewhere. I'm just saying that we definitely can't confirm it. We have not heard a whisper of that. So let's get to your phone calls. 763-260-1333. Hold on. Give me a second. The phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333. Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. You'll get notified of when we're coming on because we can pop up at any time. We just popped up on here Sunday afternoon. I've already covered that. Yes, they're vetted, they're cleared, but Doesn't mean they're coming in the Big Ten tomorrow, guys. And again, I say this as somebody a channel who we've been consistently saying that there was interest with Oregon and Washington beyond Kevin Warren. So there's no channel out there that's been more pro Oregon and Washington, the possibility of them going to the Big Ten, than us. But on the other hand, they're not to the Big Ten yet. There's hurdles between Oregon and Washington going to the Big Ten. The number one hurdle is gone, Kevin Warren. But it's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. The number is 763-260-1333. A lot of times here at Peek Around the Corner, we do the best to give you a peek. And then other people kind of take the story and they just go way beyond where the story actually is. And so a lot of times here at Peek Around the Corner, we have to back everybody up. Beep, 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 beep. Instead of giving you a peek, we usually have to put the brakes on here at Peek Around the Corner. Because stories there are times when things get real fluid. There are other times that things are not changing day to day. That's not how it works. So just like the ACC story, people reporting things are going to happen this week. Nothing was going to happen last week or the week before. Slow down. Slow down. You move too fast. You got to make the story last. Tell me who sang that song. In the chat, who sang that song? Christopher Shannon, where are you from in Minnesota, Flugar? You're from Plymouth. Christopher Shannon from Plymouth. Just had just ate at Captain Jack's there in Plymouth. I live right now. We live in Maple Grove, originally from Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Okay. Again, the phone number is 763-260-1333. The phone lines are open. Talk about anything college football. We discussed the win totals this last week, the ACC and the Big Ten win totals. We took a pass on a lot of those lines, but we smashed some of them. We went under on Michigan State. We went under on my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers. We went over on Penn State. We went over on Illinois. We went under on Duke. We went under on Clemson. We went over on Florida State. Am I going to Maloney's tonight? No, I'm not. Why? Are people going to be there? Minnesota softball. Nope. I haven't been to Maloney in a long time. Haven't been there in a long time. Mamas and Papas, Bob Husley, the Monkees. There we go. Simon and Garfunkel, car 9800 gets it. Simon and Garfunkel. Absolutely. Beautiful car 9800. Christopher Shannon went to Wayzata High School. Holy smokes. I went to Cooper, Robbinsdale Cooper. So, I don't know. I think it was it was a couple years after I graduated from high school. I saw Marion Barber III, who just passed away last year, unfortunately. Former golfer, former Dallas Cowboy. It was Wayzata versus Cooper football game. And at that time, it was the new Wayzata football field. Now, for everybody outside of Minnesota, Wayzata versus Cooper is like three Goliaths versus David. Okay? Cooper being David, unfortunately. I think it was like 48-0 at halftime. And Wayzata pulled Marion Barber out at halftime. And legitimately, if it was two hands touch, Cooper would have never gotten Marion Barber down. I mean, he was just dancing around every Cooper Hawk player. It was fun to watch. Of course, I'm a Cooper guy. I was up high in the stands. We all knew that Marion Barber III was going to be a great one, and he was, for the Gophers and for the Dallas Cowboys. Kerry Lee, if with Oregon and UW does decide to jump, would you think San Diego State and SMU would still jump to the Pac-12? Boy, Kerry, if a bunch of stuff happens to the Pac-12, let's say 2 or 4 schools leave to the Big 12, and let's say Oregon and Washington goes to the Big 10, it's hard to even guess what's going to happen. I mean, does the Pac-12, would they have enough, could they get enough support from media networks to gobble together a Mountain West plus a Pac-12, what's remaining in the Pac-12, to become a conference that would still give them autonomy 5 powers? You know, that would still grant them the Power 5 payouts of the college football playoff, expansion football playoffs. I don't have that answer for you. I really don't. I wish I did. This thing could go, if the thread is pulled, Kerry, if a Colorado pulls on that thread and more stuff happens right after them, this thing could go 1,000 different ways. And you guys are open to speculate on it, but I couldn't possibly even come close to guessing what's going to happen. I don't know if a Pac-12 can even exist if a let's say 4 schools go to the Big 12 and then Washington and Oregon then go to the Big 10. Could a Stanford, California, Washington State, and Oregon State, could they cobble together a San Diego State, a Fresno State, a Colorado State, whatever, and try to get a Pac-12 where they still have that autonomy 5 power? I don't know. If they could get that, if they keep it, then there would be incentive for San Diego State to move out of the Mountain West and to still go in to the much depleted Pac-12. But again, no threads has been pulled. As of yet, the Pac-12 still stands today on May 14th. Craig, if we assume Colorado is on one stage with the spotlight right now, and they decide to stay in the pack, does Arizona say, hold my beer and step into the spotlight? Colorado is not keeping Arizona from going into the middle of the stage on Act 11. But let's just say if Colorado stays, if they say they're going to stay in the pack, it makes it a lot easier for Arizona to stay in the pack. They're not contingent on each other. I mean, I wish I could get into more of it right now, but I can't. But Colorado is, they're making their decisions not based on what Arizona's going to do. They're making their decisions based upon, number one, Pac-12 can't get a decent media deal right now. They can't get a decent deal done. And if that continues to happen, and it looks like it's going to continue to happen, then Colorado, what other choice do they have? Because we said it here before, it's a lot easier to move now than it is going to be 5 years from now. That's not even up for debate. Sean says, in my opinion, if that many schools leave, I think the pack is dead. Stanford would become independent.
Call from
Frank Kirsch.
Kirsch, you're on the line. The floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Hi, Greg. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you doing, sir?
very well.
This is Craig, right?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, what I want to talk about is Big Ten expansion. You've mentioned a few times that they can go to 24 schools. I personally see no way possible financially that can be done. Because let's just say to get to 20, Amazon takes the Friday night game, and bringing 4 new schools is going to cost $75 million times 4, so that's $300 million. So let's say Amazon is willing to do that on a Friday night, and that pays for schools 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah.
So to get to 21, 22, 23, and 24, you have to find another $300 million.
Yeah.
You're not going to 24 unless they take schools from the ACC. We all know that. So let's say the ACC breaks up in 2030, just when the Big Ten new TV deal comes. Now, at this point, let's just keep this simple. Oregon, Washington, California, and Stanford have gone. That team's 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay? So where's the $300 million coming from to pay for these 4 schools? It's certainly not the 4th window. People have told me, well, ESPN will take that 4th window. Simply not going to happen, because ESPN is not going to pay $300 million for that 4th window when they have the Big 12 to put there for free, because the 4 corner schools will already be there. And then, so that leaves a Thursday night game. ESPN is not going to spend $300 million on a Thursday night Big Ten game when you can just put a Big 12 game there and not pay any extra money. I don't see Apple paying $300 million. I don't see anyone paying $300 million to get the 5th, 6th, and 7th best games, because that's what they would be. Amazon would get game number 4, and it's simply not worth it. The only possible way you can get that $300 million is if Fox, NBC, and CBS decided to double up on their Saturday. And I don't see that as a possibility, because all 3 of those networks have other sports programming on Saturday. I don't see how they can possibly want to spend all Saturday showing college football. But you've said now 3 or 4 times that they could go to 24. Yeah. I say the money is not there. So, Greg, you've said it, so where's the money coming from?
I think you bring up a great point. I don't know where the money's coming from. You do bring up a very good point. The only reason why I bring up the number 24, the only reason, if things get really wonky and really crazy, and the SEC and the Big Ten, Craig, don't get along here for the next 5 years. Whatever, there's a lot of issues that are going to be bubbling up. Ones that you and I don't even know that's going to bubble up. And let's see the SEC and the Big Ten don't see eye to eye on them. And the SEC does something like what Greg Sankey has said in the past. They just go and form their own galaxy. Okay? If that should happen, then the Big Ten creates their own galaxy. Then something crazy like 24 could happen, because I would think that the Big Ten would have to go to places that they're not in, and they're not going to be in a 20-team conference. Let's say the state of Texas. That's why for if the Big Ten has to form their own galaxy, because the SEC forms their own galaxy, has their own playoffs, their own championship. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just bringing up a plausible, a crazy, if things really go pear-shaped. Then that means that the Big Ten's going to have their own national championship. How does the Big Ten really proclaim a national championship when they don't even have a school in, let's say, the state of Texas, for just one example? So then I believe Big Ten probably would expand. Probably their slices may get a little smaller per team, because, as you say, the money won't be there. There's not enough valuable schools to pay for it. The networks aren't going to, all that stuff, but they're going to have their own playoffs, and maybe that would help grease the skids. That's the only way I see a 24-team Big Ten conference, and that's why I keep bringing it up as as an option. Does that answer your question?
that answers my question. But then that gets into this P2 breaking off, and I'm telling you, that's never happening where they have their own playoff. Because there's antitrust lawsuits. There'll be lawsuits flying all over the place, and they'll lose. I know there are people out there that just want the pack, those two conferences to have their own playoff, and they don't think there's any way in the world that they can lose an antitrust lawsuit. I'm telling everyone, they'll lose.
Well, I don't want it. I don't think it's going to happen. But that's why I bring up the 24. I agree with you, though. I agree with you on the difficulties of getting to 24. I understand the math. I understand the windows. There's not enough windows. I get it. To create enough value for the Big Ten. So I agree with you. I just bring 24 up as an extreme option if things really go pear-shaped.
I get it. But I mean, in your chat room and all these other, YouTube channels, I see hundreds of people saying Big Ten's going to 24. I've asked them, how are you paying for it?
Yeah,
I never get an answer.
I don't
get an answer.
Yeah, I don't see it. And here's another thing. I'm going to bring it up on your phone call here. When people bring up Notre Dame possibly becoming a Big Ten, which we've been saying forever because we believe the walls are closing in on Notre Dame, I'm probably going to surprise some people in the chat, maybe get some people upset in the chat, which is good because then we can have some real back and forth. But if the Big Ten adds Notre Dame, I do not consider that a Midwest edition. I consider that an Eastern edition.
Wow.
Yeah, I do, because Notre Dame, if they have their druthers, they're going to want to. The reason why they went to there's a lot of reasons why they went to the ACC. But let's say this. If the Big Ten goes to 20 and Notre Dame's one of them, and Oregon and Washington are another couple, and another ACC school, Notre Dame is going to try to push the play to make sure, they have that one game in California with USC, of course. That'd be a permanent rival. But a lot of their games would be on the East Coast.
Right.
Yeah, so I know people think, they would be with Purdue and Michigan State and Northwestern. I understand that. I understand that from a Big Ten point of view. But from a Notre Dame point of view, the ACC is pear-shaped right now. They can't get. We're not going down that rabbit hole. But on the average, Notre Dame wants to make sure they're playing it in the teams on the East and the Southeast. That's why the Big Ten would want to. They're going to try, and they're probably going to be successful in grabbing somebody from the Southeast. But when people talk about a Notre Dame add-on to the Big 12, I know people are thinking, that's not an Eastern edition because they're in the state of Indiana. But Notre Dame, I know everyone disagrees with me, but I think they would be placed or with the Eastern teams in the Big Ten, because that's where they do not want to be considered a Midwest. They don't. How do I say this? They understand the value of the East Coast, of the Southeast. They understand that's why they, among a lot of reasons, they agree to those 5 ACC games. They want to be played out there. They want to recruit out there. They just don't want to have to go up against the Buckeyes and the Wolverines in the Midwest. Yes, they love going into Illinois. Of course they do. They do great recruiting in Illinois, no question about it. But they want to be seen in the East and the Southeast without having to become an SEC member. So the whole Notre Dame thing in the Big Ten, I would not be surprised if they make sure they align, if it gets to regional scheduling, we're going down some rabbit holes here, but I think I made my point, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this.
Well, Notre Dame, I can see it going either way. They join the Big Ten or they stay independent. I
Yeah.
can see it going
Yeah.
both ways. But as far as this Big Ten, they're going to get to 20. And there's only three ways to do it. Either you take 4 out west, 4 out east, or 2 and 2, or 3 and 1. So I think eventually Oregon and Washington are going, and that'll be your 4 out west. And then the other 2, it depends who gets first pick, either SEC or Big Ten. But I think if the Big Ten gets their first pick, they should take Virginia and North Carolina. It will line up well with the Maryland and Rutgers on the East Coast. But that's it. They're going at 20. They got to be very selective in which 4 they pick.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, we have said it forever, but we think the Big Ten has to go west again because they definitely want to go east again. So we think it's going to be a balanced proposition for the Big Ten. I think they're going to take from both.
Oh, I agree. I think it's going to be 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Then if Notre Dame ever wants to come in, they'll let them. Notre Dame will have a standing invitation forever, I guess.
For example, if the Big Ten is trying to expand, well, I think they're going to be successful getting an ACC school whenever they become available. Let's just say we're pretending here, Craig. Okay, let's say the SEC eats first. Let's say they get everybody they want from the ACC, right? Let's say they get a North Carolina and a Virginia and a Florida State and a Clemson? Okay, let's just say they get those 4. North Carolina and Virginia, because those are 2 huge states, a lot of valuable media markets, SEC network, boom, right? Big populations, North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, and Florida State. So the Big Ten sits there and goes, let's see here. We'll expand with Miami, Florida, Notre Dame. My point is Notre Dame's going to want to play Miami, Florida every single year. And if they get put into a pod, for example, let's say they go to 4 or 5 team pods, Notre Dame's going to want to be with the Miami, Florida, with the Penn State, with the Rutgers. I think they want to be in that. They want to be in that East. So I peek around the corner. We might be the only people thinking this, but a Notre Dame edition, even though they're in the Midwest, for the Big Ten purposes, for Notre Dame, they want to be seen as an Eastern edition. As crazy as that sounds. But thanks for your phone call, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you, Greg.
it. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, great phone call by Greg Kurtz. Appreciate it, good sir. I know now. People are thinking I'm nuts. I know Notre Dame, 10 miles from Michigan. They're a Midwest school. I hope people kind of understand what I'm going with that, though. Or do you guys all think I'm crazy? That's fine. That's fine. Notre Dame would want to be in a pod with USC also, won't they? I think if they went to pods, that USC would be a permanent rival of Notre Dame's, no question about it. But I don't think, I would be very hesitant to automatically put Notre Dame in with Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State in that type of pod. I really think if Notre Dame can, they will push all the levers possible and make sure they're with whatever additions comes from the ACC, and then Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, that type of pod. But we'll see. We're a long ways away from that. We're just speculating at this point. But I just think that Notre Dame's, they're going to want some attachment to the East if they get pulled into the Big Ten. And of course, they want that game, Tony. They would get that game every year with USC, no question about it. But I don't think Notre Dame has any affinity. Notre Dame's not going to want to they're not going to want those permanent rival games with Michigan, Ohio State. They'll have it with USC. A permanent rival game maybe with the Purdue or Michigan State. They own this, they get the top players from Illinois. They don't need to have an Illinois game or Northwestern game. But I think they're going to want to make sure they have an Eastern presence if Notre Dame becomes a Big Ten member. That's what we're trying to say. Tom Dubé says, totally agree. Notre Dame wants to leverage all their alumni base from Boston down to DC. So there's one person who agrees with me in the chat room. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Hero, thanks again for your incredible generosity. Thanks again for your super chat. Appreciate it. I think the Big Ten will stop at 22. 23 if Notre Dame decides to join. Take Oregon and Washington and 2 ACC schools for sports. The other 2 will be Stanford and Cal. They bring millions in research money. I don't know about Stanford and Cal. I used to be a big proponent of Stanford, never of Cal. But I think there's issues with that. I don't think any networks are going to want to pay for it. We've been saying this for months, and that Washington and Oregon are the leading candidates out there in the Pacific Coast for Big Ten. That's what Fox Sports would be okay with. Brett McMurphy went on 365 Sports a few days ago. He did not say exactly what we're saying. I do not want to put words in Brett McMurphy's mouth. He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. He has 1 million more contacts than we do. He's 1,000 times smarter and more successful than we are at Peek Around the Corner. But I would safely say we're on the same. If we're not on the same page, we're in the same book when it comes to Oregon and Washington. And I think there's a separation between the attractiveness of an Oregon and Washington versus any other schools out west when it comes to the Big Ten and Fox Sports. That's the best way to put it. Daniel Montecasso, Rutgers is a happy loser. Nathan says Big Ten. Whoops. Nathan says the Big Ten grabs these 6. Oregon, Washington, Notre Dame, Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia Tech. If they go to 22, if they go to 24, they add Stanford and Miami. Again, the phone lines, this number is 763-260-1333. Thanks for all joining us here on a Sunday afternoon. Big week. Meetings this week. What do we got going? ACC meeting Monday through Wednesday. And the hot topic of discussion, according to Mike Alford, Florida State's athletic director, unequal revenue. Unequal revenue. Florida State thinks they deserve more. Clemson thinks they deserve more. If they go to the college football playoffs, they should get more of the media pie. More money out of the media pie of the ACC. We shall see what happens. Even in that article from War Chat, it talks about the projections. The most that Florida State would get is about $5 million more in this unequal revenue plan. Does that even put a dent in the gap between a Florida State and what they would receive from ACC revenues versus the Big Ten and what Rutgers would get versus the SEC and what Mississippi would get? It won't even put a dent in it. It won't even close it up. It's still going to be an issue. The revenue is still going to be an issue. and you add that year after year after year after year, suddenly you're $180 million behind the other schools that you're competing against to become the national champions. And again, and we've said this at Peek Around the Corner, Mike Alford did not make one mention to War Chant in that interview or any other interviews that I've seen Mike Alford talk about. He's not talking about we want to be in a conference that's the easiest to win the conference championship. He never said those words because that's not what Florida State's thinking. They want the front porch of the university to be as competitive as possible to win national championships throughout all their sports that they sponsor, which is 20 of them. They want their athletic department to be as attractive as possible to gather the best student athletes, to gather the best students to come to their schools. Oregon and Washington are not thinking, where is the best place for us to win a conference championship? Oklahoma and Texas did not think about this when they joined the SEC. USC, UCLA did not think about this when they joined the Big Ten starting in 2024. But yet we continue to see this articulated in article after article after article out west. Well, geez, Washington and Oregon, they have to be thinking about what's the easiest place for their college football team to win a conference championship. We see that. We just saw it this last week. But you know, I'm just a carnival barker here at Peek Around the Corner. That's in my bio on my Twitter account now. Again, Mike Alford did not mention that. He did not mention where is it easiest for us to win the a conference championship in football. He wants his athletic department to be able to put their student athletes in the best position possible to get as much exposure as possible as they try to get national championships. Larry Pilgrim, has anyone listened to what coaches have said? Facilities and so on don't move recruiting. It's all about NIL. Absolutely. NIL is a big part of it.
Call from
Lewis.
Lewis, thanks for calling. Can you just hold 1 second, sir?
Sure.
Larry brings up a good point. NIL, it's all about NIL. And Larry's correct. But here's the point. When we were told that USC called the Big Ten, wanted to get into the Big Ten, and we broke that on March 31st, 2022, it was the boosters, it was a booster who leaked it. It came out of Los Angeles. It did not come out of the Big Ten offices. The reason is, and we wrote it tweet after tweet after tweet, is because the boosters wanted, when the boosters got word of that, they did all they could to get USC into the Big Ten. They talked to other boosters in the Big Ten. They gave us the story to make sure that Kevin Warren knew that everybody knew what was really percolating. And it was all about, or not all about, but it was a lot about NIL. Because the boosters of USC did not want to double dip to continue to build up these NIL collectives, but yet have to keep putting money into USC for facilities and for other things like that, for coaches, for salaries, to build that new volleyball arena, what have you. So it is about NIL, but the boosters don't want to have to go back in their pockets over and over and over again. So they needed USC. They wanted USC, if they had a chance to get into the Big Ten, to get the media revenue as much, to get above that stratification line of revenue, to get it, to grab it, to go for it. So yes, it is about NIL, but the boosters can't keep pumping money into the NIL when they have to keep their university athletic department up on facilities and everything else. That's what the Clemson boosters are thinking about right now. That's what Florida State boosters are thinking about right now. That's what North Carolina boosters are thinking about right now. That's what Miami, Florida Hurricane boosters are thinking about right now. They don't want Miami, Florida. Ruiz is going to build a stadium. He's putting millions of dollars into NIL. But man, if they keep going $40 million behind every single year in media money, payouts per school versus Big Ten and SEC schools, for as far as the eye can see, even beyond the next 6-7 years, the boosters can't keep up with that. They don't want to keep up with that. So yeah, it is about NIL. It definitely is. Thank you, Lewis, for calling. I appreciate it, good sir. The floor is absolutely yours.
Well, good. I'll go ahead and get to a few points. First of all, I understand your point about Notre Dame completely because my alma mater, Duke, is the exact same way. They're both campuses that are located in different parts of the country than where they really should or where their heart is, and that is in the New York metro area.
Yeah.
Duke is basically a New Jersey to the south, and Notre Dame might as well be Long Island in the east. That's where – that's just how it is.
Thanks. We got two people who understand me. Thank you, Lewis. Appreciate it.
Now, it makes the Notre Dame's an eastern school, much like Duke really is, even though it's North Carolina.
Yeah.
The second point is that the only way that I think any of these schools in the ACC are really going to break the grant of rights is if they literally go on strike. They just refuse to play. And a court can't order, you can't force specific performance against the school. And so if they just sat out, they damaged their programs for a while, but if they truly want out, that's the only way it's going to likely work. And I'll tell you why, because Notre Dame is never, ever, ever going anywhere. I don't care what people say, we're closing in the walls, they're going to move to the Big Ten. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen in our lifetimes. And the reason being, I think deep down, Notre Dame knows that the SEC and the Big Ten can never go and have their own playoff and cut off the other 70 or so schools or however many it might be. They can't go and do their own playoff without Notre Dame. Notre Dame has enough of a presence in college football, and as soon as they join a league, the top two leagues can break off and do their own thing and leave everybody else out. But I think based on, that's not their motivation, but I just don't think they'll ever go anywhere.
Okay.
So now, with that said, now here's the main reason I called. I know the Monty show, I listen to it from time to time, but they really are, I don't know if it's true or not, but they're onto something. If you get two more Western schools, Washington and Oregon, let's say one of those teams on the West Coast is in the top 10, and Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State's in the top 10, they're playing out there on the West Coast, Fox can't air that game unless they kick off at 9 o'clock in the morning on Pacific time, which I don't believe they would do. And so I don't know if they put the money up or not, but they certainly have an interest to put up the money because they could get a blockbuster game that Fox could not get because of the way that TV deal is structured. So that makes some sense, and not enough's been made of it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the news comes out. But if I'm trying to think a few steps ahead, I've been somewhat conservative about trying to jump to conclusions. When you think a few steps ahead here, nobody wants to leave the Pac-12 as long as Washington and Oregon are there. Colorado doesn't want to leave. See Washington and Oregon stay. The conference remain a Power 5 conference with them. I'm seeing Colorado don't want to leave. So, but and the main hindrance was, at least to a lot of people, that the Big Ten did not have the money. So considering the TV executives and the athletic directors and everybody is talking to each other, if Colorado believes that the Big Ten truly has the money and this deal is going to happen, it just can't happen first, but it's going to happen eventually, then that might impact their decision-making. That, in fact, they're meeting tomorrow, and if Kliavkoff cannot present a legitimate deal, I'm hoping one of those presidents has the gumption to stand up and say, you got to show us your cards. And so we could be coming to a head, maybe not this week, and you're right, the longer it goes on, the more they stay together. But that's a potential change in narrative if if Washington and Oregon truly have a way out, and the Big Ten has the money to pay for it, because they did not have the money to pay for it last I checked. But if they do, that's a big if. and they're gone, it might not be that big as you think. It might just be that the Big 12 takes 2 teams. They may only need 2 teams. Arizona and Colorado, they may not need to double up in any states. They may not go after a group of 5 school. They might just go with 2. Big 10 goes with 2. That still leaves the Pac-12 with a conference. It's just not a Power 5 conference. It's not going to be the table in 26. It's just it's the best of the rest. And that could be where we're going. I don't know that for sure. I don't have inside information. I do believe I've guessed what the hot bubble of action is, and I'm not going to speculate publicly, but I have a pretty good idea of what probably went down just based upon what others have said over the last year. And with that, I'm hoping we get this resolved soon. I still cannot believe that Kliavkoff has not had a press conference, and that the media out there is so soft on him that they're not trying to demand him. I think the media would want him in front of the camera. I mean, it'd be like the president of the United States never having a press conference, never answering questions. People, when you're in the media for the sports out west, why aren't you saying, Kliavkoff, get out and have a press conference, answer some questions? Yeah. But they won't do it. But that, to me, is telling of just how horrific that deal is. And I just don't see anyone taking a grant of rights. It's just, I think 2 to 3 weeks. And you're right, if it gets past 2 to 3 weeks, we get into mid-June and it's still together, the Pac-12 must have decided nobody's moving. The 10 are going to stay together. They're going to take about a $22 million deal, and they're just going to ride it for 5 years until – and you know what? In 5 years, maybe Washington and Oregon are left out. Probably not, but I'm telling you, the ACC is eventually going to happen. Yeah. But I think it would take some drastic – I mean, I'm not suggesting they strike. I'm saying that there is no incentive for anybody else to leave unless they literally just don't show up and are willing to cough up the damages and bring some real damage to the conference and bring the dysfunction. That's the only way it's likely to happen. I don't think they'll win the grant of rights otherwise, and I don't believe they should be hoping Notre Dame's going to leave, because Notre Dame is likely not going anywhere. And that's what I have to say. It'll be an interesting couple of weeks. And have a great Sunday, Greg, and a great show.
Got it. Thank you, Louis. Beautiful call once again. Thank you. Great call. I just took the phone off the hook for just a moment. Daniel says Genetic 56 is now saying that the situation is fluid and people like Greg is playing on the emotions of Pac-12 fans. Okay, I just want to answer this question here. First of all, the PATC community is not stupid. The PATC community is the smartest college football YouTube channel community out there. They know all this stuff is going on. We give them a peek. We've been able to give them really good information in a timely manner. No, we haven't been able to open up the curtains fully. We will on some of these things down the road. But the PATC community, they know the importance of these issues. They understand it. They're reading the same thing I'm reading. They get it. We're not playing on anybody's emotions. Is this dramatic? Yes. Is this fluid? Of course it is. I wasn't the one who said automatically that the Big Ten wasn't going to expand westward. I wasn't the one who said automatically no way would a Big 12 not be able to poach a school from the Pac-12. I wasn't the person saying all these things. I was covering the whole story. I wasn't the person out there saying that there was an Endeavor plot. And that you actually named a person, a lady who works at Endeavor, and you went after her, Genetics 56. We're not playing on emotions. We're giving an avenue for people to talk about what they feel already emotionally about these issues. Lewis just called. He's a brilliant person, a brilliant caller. He knows all about these issues. He talks about the Big East of years ago. He sees a trend. He sees things replicating. He gives out an opinion. He disagrees with me on Notre Dame. That's what we do on this channel. We disagree with we're not playing on emotions with each other. We're actually talking about the issues, taking it from all different angles. We at Peek Around the Corner said that the Big Ten was, there were more than just Kevin Warren who was in favor of Washington and Oregon. You, Genetics 56, you said that was not true. You were wrong. Take the L. You said, Genetic 56, that USC did not call the Big Ten last spring. You said that USC was not going to join the Big Ten. You said that there was going to be a Power 2 and Nebraska was actually going to leave the Big Ten and go into the Super League. That's what you said on your Twitter over and over again. You were wrong. Take the L. I mean, I can't imagine. I've never had anybody send me a tweet that you were actually correct on. As you sit behind your, whatever you call it, your smiley face. We don't play on each other's emotions here. We're already have emotions because these are really serious things that are going on. And yes, things are fluid. You better believe it. The Pac-12 is hanging by a thread. And we've been telling the truth on that. We haven't been slandering reporters who are actually being conservative in what they're saying. We've actually held back on stories to be professional about it. We haven't gone after people who have gone after us, the people with real names out there. We've just let it go, just like we did with the USC story. Yeah, things are fluid. Absolutely, they're fluid. And there was a huge body blow to the Pac-12. And we're going to be honest, we said it, we saw it coming, we were tracking it. We gave people a peek here at this channel. And then we're also being honest and saying that the Pac-12, as of May 14th, is still standing. Is that playing on people's emotions? We're telling the truth. And we're letting people disagree with each other. We don't slander each other. We're not calling each other liars. Okay. Back to the phone. I'm going to open up the phone lines here. Back to the phone lines. The lines is now open. 763-260-1333. The phone line is open. Ba 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 ba. Greg plays on all the emotions every time he sings. Yeah. Well, every time I sing, people do start to cry, and it's not because they're in a lot of pain. The Thinker, why does this guy talk like he's an insider? Who is this guy and why does he act like an insider? I don't think I'm an insider. We are the rebel outpost of all college football YouTube channels.
Larry Pilgrim.
Larry, nice for you to call, sir. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg.
How you doing, sir?
Good. Hope you're doing well as well.
Doing all right.
So I just wanted to follow up on, didn't want to put it in the messaging, but Craig Kirsch brought up the point of, if they go to 24, say the SEC, Big Ten, go to 24, where they're going to get the money, where they're going to do this, and lawsuit. That doesn't mean there still won't be a playoff. They're not going to exclude a playoff. The thing is if he hasn't noticed, they just started doing what their big plan is. They're going to start eliminating the conferences. Looks like Pac-12's first, and who knows when the Big 12 and the ACC get taken out, because as soon as they pluck the Texases and USCs all into one conglomerate, they're not going to pay the Big 12. They're going to pay all that money is going to go to the Big 10 and the SEC. And the other three conferences, if they still exist, are going to get the G5 type money. That's where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
So if you took 4 teams from the ACC, there's probably 6, maybe 4 to 6 that add value. No, 4 that add viewership value. North Carolina does not add viewership. I don't care what anybody says. Their numbers are, Louisville gets better ratings than North Carolina.
But you're gonna sell a lot of conference subscription, like networks.
Carrier fees in 10 years, I think they're not going to be worth anything what they're near today, and especially, and that's why Disney or ESPN is trying to do direct to consumer, because people are cutting the cord and they want to just buy a la carte. So your carrier fees are going to keep declining. Cable companies are not going to be able to keep paying those. It's not good for their business. So my big point was they've already started the consolidation, so they're not going to need to show Texas Tech and Iowa State. You know, he's talking about where can their games be shown, where are they going to get the money? Well, instead of showing Texas Tech, Iowa State on Fox 330, they're showing Clemson, Minnesota, or Clemson, Penn State, or Miami, Alabama. So those games draw the numbers. They've already shown us they're trying to get the biggest brands on TV, and they're going to slowly eliminate the bottom dwellers. So that's where the money's coming from, and that's where the viewership's going to come from, in my opinion. And I've heard many coaches, many athletic directors say the same thing. That's where we're headed. And the networks are directing it.
You could be right, Larry. Again, we're in the midst of consolidation. I just hold out economics might change on this 10 years down the road. Maybe these conferences get too big. Maybe there's fractures, inside these conferences. Things like that could happen, Larry. But you're right. I mean, you're right, Larry. It's just I'm so biased against it happening that it I know it's already happening, but I don't want the end game. There's never going to be an end game, but in the end game, like 15 years from now, to be 2 conferences. I just
you're with the other 110 universities that aren't named Michigan, that aren't named Ohio State, that aren't Texas.
Yeah.
We don't want to be alienated because we don't have 60 million viewers for 4 games. So I'm with you. I don't want to see everybody alienated. I understand the business, but I don't want to see it either.
Yeah. As a fan. Yeah.
And then, and what's upsetting me is the Big Ten is starting. Why is Michigan and Ohio State, why can't we direct things differently? They're ducking good teams. Oh, well, we can't play these guys because we have another Power 5 on there. We can't take another L. That's why I think a 12-team playoff with automatic conference champions should be in there so we can get some of these out-of-conference matchups so that the networks can make money.
Yep.
So I wish it went that way, but that's not the way it's going.
I agree with you. As a fan, I want to see the big non-conference games.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was all I really wanted to say.
I agree with you, sir. Great phone call. I get it, Larry. You're absolutely right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Great phone call by Larry. Look, we've been preaching this world of consolidation since we started this YouTube channel. It's why we said Texas and Oklahoma was going to call the Big Ten or the SEC. It's why we broke the story of the USC. This whole thing. We understand it. But man, I don't like it. I don't like it. And I'm not going to, we're going to call it like we're going to give you the peaks around the corner, but I'm not going to be smiling every time we do it. But Larry is, He's speaking in a mature fashion. He knows what he's talking about, and he's absolutely correct. I got a lot of fear over all of it, but I guess I'm just playing with my own emotions here. Daniel, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it, good sir. Thank you for PATC and happy Mother's Day. Thank you, Daniel and his wife. Thank you for all your support you've done for this channel, your incredible generosity. I appreciate it. Happy Mother's Day to my mom, Maxine Roney Flugar, 90 years old.
Call from
Monavision, Mr. Buckeye, the floor is yours.
Is this the Carnival Barker I'm talking to?
Yes, this is the Carnival Barker. I got a loud voice, a loud, horrible singing voice. He's got to be who I'm talking about.
Well, I just want to answer Larry's question first. Ohio State has a conference schedule. The last 20 years has been the strongest hard conference schedule by far. We've done series with Oregon, Notre Dame. We've got series coming up with Texas, Alabama. Series with Miami, Virginia Tech. Those were scheduled with Miami and Virginia Tech are really good. Oklahoma, we played Oklahoma twice. The new rule on P5 has nothing to do with nothing. The Big Ten has more at work here than just trying to avoid other Power 5 opponents. I've said it before, this will certainly upset Western Civic, but a lot of this has to do with getting Notre Dame into the Big Ten. This has to do with saying to Notre Dame, you're not going to get a play Big Ten team.
Hey, Monavision, we're having a hard time hearing you on your phone.
All right, I was just saying.
There you
really
go, better,
quick, right? The new
better.
the new P5 rule is not to duck competition.
Yeah.
The new P5 rule, and I know Western Civic disagrees with it, is to get Notre Dame into the Big Ten. It's to withhold Big Ten opponents from Notre Dame. And that includes USC. Like I said on the last live show, USC can replace Notre Dame with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Notre Dame doesn't have that option out there. And if the rumors are to be believed that Notre Dame is putting up majority for a potential addition of Oregon and Washington, it's even less money for NBC to give Notre Dame for 7 home games a year.
Yeah.
And it's driving Western Civic nuts, but hey, Notre Dame's going to be a Big Ten team eventually. And the SEC is going to push for that because the SEC probably realizes that Notre Dame leaving the ACC is going to get them their best shot at getting that first crack at the teams they want from the ACC.
Did you guys hear? Did you hear what Monavision just said? He says the SEC wouldn't have any problems if Notre Dame breaks out of that grant of rights like they can do. They're the one school that can do it and joins the Big Ten because that cracks open some of those ACC schools to be taken by SEC. That's what Monavision just said. And I think he's absolutely 100% correct. So keep that in mind.
Well,
go ahead, sir.
It's not just the SEC either. The Big 12 also would like that scenario.
Yes, sir.
There's ACC teams that the Big 12 would definitely covet that wouldn't fit into the SEC or the Big 10. So this idea that Notre Dame wields some kind of holy power, no pun intended, to make it so that you can't have a 2 or 3 league playoff is ridiculous. It's just another college football team. They have a great tradition. They're an independent. They've got a huge brand. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to do something. They can't remain out there as an independent. When they're not going to be able to schedule decent teams, when their schedule is going to be comprised of 5 ACC teams and 7 G5s, I mean, they're not going to have a choice in the matter. So I know I say this a lot, but no future Big Ten expansion without Notre Dame. And what that means is every expansion move the Big Ten takes is going to be related to Notre Dame.
Yes.
And that's it, Greg. I'll let you get back to barking at people on the midway and getting them in here.
Thank you. Great call. Great call. Tom DeBay, thank you so much for your incredible generosity. Appreciate all your efforts on here. Cheers. Thank you, Tom, for helping us keep the lights on here. Incredible generous donations today. I appreciate it. We are a completely independent YouTube channel. We do not do, what do you call that? Those YouTube where you pay in to get in, whatever they're called. We don't do any of that stuff here at Peek Around the Corner. We're completely independent. We survive on your donations. You help us keep the lights on. We appreciate it. And I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've been over on the air about 2 hours. We appreciate all your support. We did a Sunday afternoon. It's what could work with us here at the home front. I appreciate you all coming in on those weird hours. But we had to clear some things up. We have a big week coming up this week. Pac-12 meetings, ACC meetings. Last week we did the win totals, over-under win totals of the ACC and the Big Ten. We're going to be doing some more conferences coming up this week as we head towards the middle of the summer. Hopefully we get the Pac-12, Big 12 saga over with. But George Kliakoff, you're going to have to come in with the goods. It's going to have to happen. And I would be leaking something positive right now, Kliakoff. I would be doing it right now. Leak something positive heading into the meeting. Build some momentum. Because there's some vulnerable schools out there. They're thinking, what should I do? What should I do? Should I make the move now? Do I trust Oregon and Washington? What's going to happen over in ACC country? George Kliakoff, you got to come with the goods tomorrow in the Pac-12 meeting. Hang with us here at Peek Around the Corner. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel before you leave. Smash that like button. It helps with the algorithm so much. But subscribe to the channel to make sure you get notified because we can pop up at any time. You know it. I know it. We're not playing on each other's emotions. We're already emotional as we come into Peek Around the Corner, keep your head on a swivel live shows. Because all of this college football, we're passionate. We love it. We don't need anybody to steer the drink for us because we're already stirred. We're already crazy about college football, the game we love. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.